hey, you over here. You're invited to my son's birthday tomorrow. And you guys, you're also invited to my son's birthday tomorrow. Oh, you, yeah, you guys. You guys are invited. I wasn't sure about inviting you guys, but my wife told me I should. So you guys are also invited to my son's birthday. And I know, you probably think, I don't even know you, so why are you inviting me to your son's birthday tomorrow? And everybody thinks I'm crazy, and then I tell them, and they think, oh, he's just a biased dad. So you can think I'm biased if you want, or you can show up to the party. My son's birthday, it's tomorrow. And my wife says, listen, if you're gonna invite everybody to our son's birthday every single year, you gotta at least tell them a little bit about our son, because otherwise it just gets awkward really quick. Things like this happen. People show up, and you can tell that they're just there because I said there was gonna be a party. And they're like, is there gonna be free food? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, great, booze? Yeah, okay, yes. And they're like, I'm there. And they sit in the back, and they have no interest in the one whose birthday it is, but they're there for the party, and it's great. And every year there's people who show up, and they're like, hey, happy birthday. Nice to meet you. Yeah, it's your birthday, right? It is? No, I didn't think so. And they're like going around to everybody in the room like, happy birthday, and then it's awkward because you start to realize they're here and they want to honor the person whose birthday it is, but they really have no idea whose birthday it is. They go around. Here's the other weird one that happens. It happens every single year. Don't know when this tradition started, but it just keeps coming every single year. Every year there's people who show up, and they show up with their Ford Camels, and they show up in their Toyota Camels, and they show up with their Honda donkeys, and one tried to show up with a Tesla donkey, but that didn't fly in my time because as soon as you plugged him in, PETA came out of the woodwork. And so anyways, they showed up with their camels and their donkeys, and they got gifts. And I'm sitting there, and I'm going, finally, somebody figured it out. Like, finally, somebody knows the value of my son. And they're bringing all these gifts, and I'm like, this year is going to be good. And then I noticed, this happens every year, I noticed that they start handing out gifts to every single person at the party, except my son. And I'm like, this is awkward. It's strange, because why does this happen every single year? So my wife says, listen, just tell them a little bit about the truth, because otherwise it kind of poisons the birthday. It's always awkward every single year when people show up, they bring gifts for everybody else, or they show up and they don't know whose birthday it is, or they show up and they just don't care. So just tell them. So I got to tell you a little bit of truth about who my son is. And if you want to come to the birthday tomorrow, great. We're going to be there, and it happens every year. And so we're going to celebrate good if you want to come tomorrow. So here's a little bit about how the story goes. I was a teenager, and I was betrothed. If you haven't figured out yet, my name's Joseph. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I get excited when I'm inviting people to my son's birthday. I'm betrothed. You guys don't do betrothal. You do dating for love. It's so great. And you also do Nikes. Those are great too. I'm getting a little more used to the Nikes. But you do dating, and so you don't really know maybe what betrothal is. So one family gets together with another family, and they're like, hey, I have a son, and hey, I have a daughter, and they should get married, and then they're committed to each other. So it's betrothal. And inevitably, there's people in my culture who are just like the people in your culture who wanted to marry for love, and they hear the word betrothal, and they run for the door. Or in this case, the hills. See, I thought my wife was one of those people. My wife now, I thought she was one of those people, because here's what happened. We're betrothed together, my wife, Mary, and I, and we're supposed to be committed to each other. And we're planning the wedding, our families are planning, everything's going great, and all of a sudden she decides to get up and go to the hill country. And I'm like, oh, it's kind of strange, a little bit weird. She's there for like 3 months. And I'm like, maybe she just really has some close family there, and she just really enjoys being with them, and she's like, I don't know after I get married if I'll be able to be there, so maybe I'll just go for an extended time now. Anyways, the awkward part is that she comes back 3 months later, noticeably pregnant. And I'm thinking, she's one of those women. She's one of those women that as soon as they heard the word betrothal, ran for the hills, and they were like, I want to marry for love. I don't want to marry, I don't want to get betrothed, I don't know who this Joe guy is, and I don't care about family friends. It doesn't work like that. So that's what I thought. And then I hear that that's not the case. Not only does she come back noticeably pregnant, she also comes back talking the fool, crazy, nuts. She's talking about visions from heaven and hearing from angels, and she's talking about God gave me this baby, and I didn't really sleep with anybody, and so she's not just unfaithful, she's off her rocker. She is nuts. Nobody's heard anything from God for 300 years. This is crazy. So my parents are like, what do you want to do, Joe? And I'm like, what do I want to do? She's nuts. I don't want to marry her. She's the last person I want to marry. Then my parents were like, well, yeah, but we already committed you. It's kind of the process. It would kind of maybe look bad on us if we kind of backed out now. And I was like, look, I don't want to chase a woman who's already given her heart to someone else for the next however many years we're married. And I'm not really interested in being with a crazy person who thinks they're hearing from God. I'm not really interested in raising somebody else's kid. I want to have my own kids. I'm not interested in getting married and not consummating the marriage until she has a baby. Not excited about any of those things. I don't want to marry her. And my parents, they could understand. And I said, but listen, I know that you and Mary's parents have been friends for a long, long time. And I'm not trying to disrespect this family. They're going to have a hard enough time as it is. I mean, they're going to have to figure out how to deal with a baby that has no father, or at least they haven't been willing to admit to one yet. They're going to have to deal with the shame of the community. They're just going to have a lot to deal with. And that's if they can even get married again. So let's just tell them the wedding's off, and we'll just walk away quietly. We don't need to embarrass them. We don't need to put it out in public. I don't want to marry her. So my parents say, okay, tomorrow we'll go. We'll tell the family the wedding's off, but we're not going to make a scene about it. So I go to sleep. This is where the story gets crazy. I go to sleep, and the night, I can only describe to you a vision, a dream, call it an angel. Listen, here's the deal. I've never had a dream like it since, and never had a dream before that was anything the same. Some angelic something came to me and said, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife. For the child that is conceived within her is of the Holy Spirit. She will bear a son. You will give him the name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. And I was laying there. I woke up and I was like, no, I'm crazy too. And I was thinking, maybe I just thought too much about it before I went to sleep. Maybe I was just overthinking it, and I should have just let it go. And so I said, okay, God, listen, I don't know if I'm hearing from you. I don't know if I'm not hearing from you, but here's the deal. I'm going to go back to sleep. If I wake up in the morning and I could still hear as clearly now then as I can now whatever thing just happened said to me, then maybe I'll believe it's from you. But if I wake up in the morning and it's just like every other dream, I can't remember who said what and did what and who was where and was I at home or in space, I don't know, then I'll know I should just go along with the plan because she's crazy. And so I went back to sleep. It took me a little while, but I went back to sleep. And I woke up in the morning and I opened my eyes. Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife. The child that is conceived within her is of the Holy Spirit. She will bear a son, and you will give him the name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. And I was like, dang it. On repeat, over and over in my head, the exact same words. Couldn't get it out. Didn't matter how hard I tried. So I laid there for a little bit, hoping it would go away, but it didn't. Got out of bed, went into the kitchen. My mom was there preparing breakfast, and she knew it was going to be a tough day, so she asked me how I slept. And I said, I think I'm supposed to take Mary as my wife. She kind of looked up from what she was doing, put her stuff down. My dad comes running in from outside, because there's no doors in our house, so you say one thing and everybody can hear it. And so he's like, what? And I'm like, I had a dream. Listen, have you ever had a dream from an angel? And they're like, no. I was like, well, how am I supposed to know what it sounds like? Have you had a dream like that ever before? No. What did it say? Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife. The child that is conceived within her is of the Holy Spirit. She will bear a son, and you will give him the name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. And they said, that's that's the same thing Mary said. And I said, yeah, I know. And so we went through. We went through at the wedding. I just couldn't get away from it. I couldn't get around it. It didn't matter how hard I tried. It was like, I've never heard anything like that before. But that wasn't the moment that I really knew that God was doing something. Because even after going forward with the wedding, planning it, going forward with it, and then living together without having consummated the marriage, because I wanted to be able to tell all of you guys when I invited you to my son's birthday party, that kid was not mine. But I still thought I was a little bit crazy, and I still thought she was a little bit crazy. But here's the moment when I decided that neither one of us were crazy, and I realized that what we had heard was actually from God. We were, Caesar decides, hey, let's take a census of all the people in the land, and so we got to travel 90 miles by foot to Bethlehem, 4 days before my wife's going to give birth to said child. 90 miles, 4 days of walking 8 to 10 hours. I don't know what you think of your wives, but my wife's a beast. People said, she rode on a donkey, right? It was a nice ride. No, donkey, you know how slow donkeys walk? A lot slower than we walk. They could care less. No, if you want to get there in 4 days, you got to walk. So she walked. She walked to Bethlehem, the place of my family, and consequently the place that God also said the Messiah would be born. She walked there and she gave birth, and you know how much time you have to talk with your wife while you're walking for 8 to 10 hours for 4 days? So we talked about a lot of things, one of which I said to, I'm so glad you guys don't wear these things anymore. One of the things we talked about was I said to Mary, my wife, I said, so what are we going to name the kid? And she said, yeah, funny. I haven't brought that up yet because, you see, when I heard from God, he gave me a name for the baby. So the reason I haven't brought it up is because you don't get a say in the name. And I kind of looked at her and I was like, well, funny you say that because dream that I had of God telling me also gave me a name, and the reason I haven't brought it up yet is because you don't really have a say in it. And that's the moment when we knew the rubber met the road. Because she was either going to say a name that was different than the one that I had or the same. And if it was different, we were both off our rockers. We were nuts hearing visions, and we were on something. Somebody slipped us something in our tea. I don't know. Or they were going to be the same. And we would know that God was doing something in the both of us that we had no idea how big, how grand. And so I said, well, I'll tell you what, on 3, I'll say 3, and then on 3, you say the name that you got, and I'll say the name that I got. And she said, wait, what if they're different? And I said, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. In my mind, I was thinking, if they're different, we're nuts. And so I said, 1, 2, 3, and we both said, Jesus, at the same time. And that was the moment that I knew that God was doing something, because she had received the prophecy before she was even pregnant and was given the name. And I was given the name by dream in my own home, in my own bed. 2 different times, 2 different places, and yet we were both given the same name. That's not the moment, though, that caused me to then go around and invite all of you and invite everybody that I see to my son's birthday every single year, which is not really my son, it's my adopted son. That moment came a little bit later. It actually came a little bit later when I died. See, y'all thought I was crazy for inviting you all to my son's birthday who don't even know me. You maybe thought my wife was a little bit crazy for hearing visions, but who's the crazy one? Because y'all have been listening to a dead guy for the last 20 to 25 minutes. The funny part of the story was I went a little bit longer, a few years, and then I died. And then I stood before God instantaneously in heaven, and in a millisecond I realized I had no business being there. I thought I lived a pretty faithful life. I tried to live faithfully. I tried to live according to the law. I tried to follow God and only God, and I thought I lived pretty well, but the second I got there, I realized I have no business standing in the presence of God. I have no business standing in his holiness, his glory, his wonder. It didn't take me but a millisecond to realize I'm in trouble. Because I didn't expect the grandeur that I would encounter standing before God. And the crazy part is that God that day let me into heaven, and I kind of got up off my face and was like, I'll take it. Because in my mind, I was thinking, when I stood there, I was thinking, no way do I get in. Because I have severely underestimated my own righteousness. Unrighteousness. And so I get into heaven, and I get to see the rest of my son's life. I get to see him live. I get to see him finish growing up. I get to see him start calling people, start telling people who he really was, that he was from God. And I got to see him live righteously and treat people with love and respect, and get to watch him be arrested for committing no crime. And I watched him be crucified. I watched him be put in a grave. And all the while, I'm going through life in heaven, and I'm kind of asking around, like, hey, when you stood before God, did you think you were going to get in? Like, when you stood before God, did you think you were going to get in? Not one person that I've talked to has said, yeah, when I died and I stood before God, I was like, yep, I'm pretty good. I got this. Every single person that I talked to said, you know what, I wasn't sure. I mean, I was pretty sure this was the one I was believing in, but I realized real quick that I was unworthy. And then God let me in, and I wasn't quite sure what was going on, but I took it. I watched my son resurrect from the dead, and then I realized that God didn't let me in because I was good enough. He didn't let me in because I just happened to be feeling nice that day. Didn't let me in because I came to heaven in my finest dressed suit. Didn't let me into heaven because I bribed him. I didn't figure it out until later, but he let me in because of my perfect son. My son. The dad's supposed to sacrifice himself for his child, but in this case it was the opposite. I didn't have anything to sacrifice for him. He had everything to sacrifice for me. And he did. And then I and everybody else realized what exactly was going on. It was my son who changed my life and all the other people that were standing around watching with me. And that's why I invite everybody to his birthday. That's why I tell you that you may think I'm just a biased dad, but I'm telling you that if we were to actually listen and pay attention, we would understand that all he wants is our loyalty. We ask the question every year, just like the shepherds did when they came. The shepherds were funny because they heard the announcement of our son from angels. And they were a little timid when they came to us on the night he was born. They came and they were like, where's the child that was born? And we're like, yeah, there's a baby born here. And we're like, how'd you know? And they were like, oh, well, yeah, what was the made-up story? Angels told us, yeah, we were out in the field. Angels told us, and I think they expected us to be surprised by that, but we were like, hey, not the first time we've heard that about this kid. Angels announcing thing, and so we just kind of rolled with it, and they were like, okay, sure, yeah, just a baby? That's cute, nice baby. They announced it to us in similar fashion that we first heard it from angels. You might be saying, well, Joe, if you're saying that's the birthday boy tomorrow, I'm not sure I have anything to bring. I'm not sure I'm even worthy enough to show up. I'm not sure that based on what I've done, I'm not sure he would even want me there. Not sure he would even care if I just stayed away and never came. Lots of people think that. But I didn't get into heaven because I was worthy to go to his party. I got into heaven because he was worthy and he was willing to sacrifice his life for me. His dad. So you might be asking, what gift could I bring? What gift could I possibly bring that would be of any value whatsoever to your son tomorrow on his birthday? And we ask Jesus this every single year because we think, maybe it'll change, but he gives us the same answer every single year. What is it that you want? What is it that you want for your birthday? What is it that if people could bring, it would satisfy you? And he's like, well, I don't need any more stuff. I kind of own it all. I don't need any more money because I own that too. What I want from people who come to my birthday is their loyalty. What I want is their trust. When I say that no one can come to the Father except through me, I want them to believe it. When they say, oh yeah, I follow that guy who's your son, and I'm going to come to your party tomorrow because I follow him, I would like their lives to actually look like they follow me. I want their loyalty. I want their trust. And I ask him every year, do you care if people come who have formerly spit in your face and not cared anything about you? And he says, no. No, if today they would choose to follow me, to trust me, to believe in me, that would be enough for me. They could come tomorrow. And it would be a great celebration. And he's like, inevitably, it'll be an awkward celebration because some people will show up, they'll have gifts for everybody else. And I'll be sitting in the corner thinking, I wonder when they're going to figure out loyalty and trust and belief. Inevitably, there'll be people who come in, they're just here for the party. Don't really care about whose party it is, but they like celebrating the party. But some every year will come new, believing, trusting, having faith. That's what he wants. So anyways, tomorrow is my son's birthday. He's my adopted son, not my real son. You're invited. You guys are invited, and you guys are invited, and you guys are invited. My name's Joseph. It's nice to meet you guys.